afternoon, good evening, and good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Ambassador Wing and a brand new installment of Council of the Ones Crusade Review. And today we are going to be reviewing, and forgive the typos in the title. We will be reviewing episodes 8 and 9, Patterns of the Soul and the Paths of Sorrow. And with me, as always, you know her, you love her. She's wacky, she's goofy, she is my fellow council member, Madam Fiona Wolf. Fiona, good to see you, my dear.
Hello, and also, oh man, techno mages, they can really pull all the punches with their words.
Yes, they can. So, and do want to say hello to everybody watching out there in internet land, whether you're watching on words on YouTube, on Facebook, or on Twitter. Hope y'all are having a great day, and thank you for being with us today. I know we were off last week, and good to see so many familiar faces. Archer Collin and PJ maybe. Hey guys, lurking in the back. Okay, we'll just make sure you're lurking safely, PJ. So, but today, as I said, we are playing a little bit of catch up. We might actually do this for the remainder of the Crusade reviews. We might be doing two for one. So, but as I said, today we're reviewing Patterns of the Soul and the Paths of Sorrow. So, as always, if this is your first visit to the council and your first visit to the Ambassador Wing, welcome one and all. Thank you for being here today. Hope you enjoyed the review. And make sure you smash that like button. Share this out with all your friends who are fans of good sci-fi, quality sci-fi, not that bootleg sci-fi like they talk about in the sketchier parts of the internet, like New Trek. Though I've never watched New Trek, so I can't really speak to that. But that being said, I have done my deal. Fiona, let's jump right in. Which episode would you like to cover first?
I'm just saying, it's just like wine. The older, the better.
Yes, that is true. That is very, 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 very true. So, but Fiona,
I say we could probably just go in order, just because the way
okay.
The original order that they put originally Path of Sorrows as episode 4 and then Patterns of the Soul as episode 5 with the broadcast run. And this version of the run is better because you get a couple episodes to get to know everybody before they hit you with these ones.
Yeah, before they hit you in the feels.
So that way at least you can grow to understand some of the basic character setups, and then they hit you with this. Like a two-for special. There you go.
Yes. So, anyway, well, let's jump right into Patterns of the Soul. And this is I'm going to admit, these episodes have been really hitting me in all the numerous different ways. In this episode, you're like, why do I get the feeling this Earth Force general is being a bit sketchy? Why do I get the feeling he's a holdover from the Clark regime? Why do I get the feeling he's not completely on the up and up when he says, well, President Sheridan said I could do it? I'm like, but did he really?
No, he gave President Sheridan the whitewashed version because President Sheridan doesn't have higher level clearance into EarthGov military projects anymore. He's not the Sheridan of... technically, he's not the Sheridan of season 2 where he had some of his backdoor tricks. Kind of like how Gideon has a certain backdoor tricks because Gideon is more of a starship rat instead of a captain.
Hey.
He has a few little kind of rat tendencies.
Don't make Gideon a rat. He's not a rat. What are you talking about?
But no, you can see rat in a good kind of view because rats are usually clever and they figure out things fairly quickly, and they're like, "Ooh, let's take the side road to get what we need." I mean, Gideon's kind of like a character where if you're going to have somebody be more chaotic good, that's a decent way to go about it. He's not to the level of like an anti-hero that's just doing everything for himself. He's like Robin Hood. I won these codes while I was drinking with buddies.
Yeah. He also won something else, so... Ambassador Wing, I was thinking of you when I was watching the last bits of Paths. What exactly do you mean, Colin? Because I'm I'm not sure how I should feel about that.
Well, for Path of Sorrow, I think Paths of Sorrow.
Hmm. Well, that could
Uh,
mean any number of things, but we'll come to Paths of Sorrow here shortly. Let's work on Parents of the Soul first. And again, I do apologize for the typos in the title, even though it's one small little one. I pride myself on perfection, so I do apologize. But anyway,
don't fear the typos. I should know. I write a lot. Don't fear
yeah, as
the
the
typos.
bit with the message. Oh, gotcha. Thank you, Colin. Yeah, I get that now. Alrighty. Gotcha. And we'll come to that. We'll come to that project. We'll come to Paths of Sorrow here in a little bit. But yeah, this apparently some people got off of Earth right when the Drak dropped their plague, but yet they didn't actually get hit with the plague. It got shipped to them, and I'm like, hmm. And it brings up the whole idea of military experimentation on soldiers, and I'm like, I don't like this idea.
Well,
I'm not
there's
a
also
fan of experimentation on anybody unless they're willing to do it.
well, these
And it's
guys
for a good
did
reason.
consent. They consented in the beginning because they were able to be used like more for their patriotic duty. But here,
Mhm.
unlike something like what you're more familiar with how the super soldier serum changed the Captain America guy,
Mhm.
the foundation was already there. So they used the foundation of these genuinely decent, hardworking soldiers, and then a handful of people just basically decided like, let's make them more super soldier, regardless of what the experimentation will do.
Yeah, and that's not good. Not to mention, we find out on this world, uh, Dorina is not alone. Some of her people were elsewhere. And correct me if I'm wrong, Fiona, but that transport ship looked a bit Narnish.
Yes, it looked like the Narns because the name of the ship started with a Q too, and the Narns do love their Q naming conventions. But yeah, you could
That
tell
is
it was from like before the Shadow War, even Babylon 5 started, because the villagers there said they've been there for a few generations. So the Narns were at it with the Centauri for a couple hundred years, I think, even before Babylon 5 started. And they got most of their spacefaring stuff from the Centauri. So in turn, I wouldn't be surprised because the Narns have done some dubious things in the past. They were probably going to try to do like some sort of like colonization fair, but they met the shadows. Oops.
Yeah, and in these two episodes, we meet the shadows a couple of times. Yet the model of the ship that the Cerberus runs into, I'm not familiar with. That's different. That's a different class of shadow vessel than we've seen before. Knowing what I
Well,
know
probably
about where,
because they weren't awake yet, like fully awake. It was probably like a scout version of their vessels.
yeah, and that's entirely possible too. I see a bit more in this episode that hints at what is to come. Don't be a Clark. And to our fellow council member, Mountains of Elysium, good to see you, my friend, our friend, not just my friend. And appreciate you being here. Hope all is well with the family and hope you all enjoyed your vacations. So, anyhow, as he said, don't be a Clark. Hit that like button. So, anyway, this, honestly, with Parents of the Soul, it deals with a lot of different issues and everything because one, you've got a group of people that got off of Earth right when the drop plague hit, and you've got a
They
very
truly weren't
sketchy.
infected. They
No, they
weren't
were not.
infected at all. Not
No,
initially.
not until a pesky little Earth Force general is like, "We want these people back, and we're going to do whatever we have to get them, and you're going to cooperate, Matthew." And Matthew's like, "Well, screw you. No, I'm not."
Oh man, and you know what? Even though Max is only in it a little bit, it actually showcases a side of him like he's not completely corporate to the point where he doesn't have a soul anymore.
Mm-hmm.
because he did give vital information to figuring out that particular general's ties to a certain corporation that infected the people on purpose. Oh dear.
Yeah, and it begs the question: is it okay to deliberately infect people with a virus, even if they have consented to being experimented upon genetically? And I say with no issue whatsoever, a resounding nay, nay. It is not okay. You don't experiment on people unless it's consented to.
And the soldiers did consent at first because
Mm-hmm.
it was shortly after like the Earth Minbari War, and they wanted their guys to be tougher, be able to last maybe as long as the Minbari. But at first, it was just simple enhancements, and then you could tell by the way he was talking, the
Mm-hmm.
leader, that the enhancements got to the point where it actively killed the soldier friends that they were with, like the eye
Yeah.
enhancements they did on his wife killed her.
Yeah.
You know,
Nishkit. Not good. Very bad thing. And Matthew Gideon and Dr. Chambers, being the resourceful individuals that they are, they're like, I think we're going to figure out a way to help out these people and keep everybody safe and keep everybody where they want to be. And, well, thankfully, they
oh,
succeeded.
the 1 year timestamp on the rest of Dorina's colony, um, that probably would have culminated during like the season finale or something. They probably would have figured out a way to save some of her people.
Yeah, probably. And
Because unfortunately, that virus works faster on her people than it does humans. Oh, a 1 year time bomb. Oh dear. So that way you got the immediate problem and you got the longer term problem.
yeah. And you do feel bad for Dorina because she finally finds out that she's not alone. But oopsie, her people, the last little group of her people, are now infected with the Drak plague too. So, and I do want to bring up Elysium's comment here. This is the start of the Earth Force Shadow Tech arc that's supposed to span the 5 years of Crusade. Yeah. And do want to say hello to the chat, another fellow member of the council, MB Geek. MB Geek is good to see you, bud. Appreciate you being here. And hopefully you're able to get some rest. Hopefully you're able to get to sleep sometime in the near future. And I know how that is. So, uh, it's amazing. And, speaking of losing sleep, this episode, Parents of the Soul, opens up with the with Mr. Black going to the elder and saying, "Okay, what the heck is going on?" And the elder's like, uh, "Things are not going to be going very well here soon." And he's like, "We have
Stones
accepted
never
our
lie. They
yeah,
keep rolling up blank, and it's just like, ooh, man. Ooh.
yeah." And I'll bring up Colin's comment here. I wasn't aware of that when I first saw the episode. So the potential tech experimentation didn't register. Yeah. And obviously, we know that the Clark administration did a whole lot of experimentation with Shadow Tech and everything. Obviously, from the episode in season 4 of B5 where they're taking out those advanced destroyers, and you're like, "Oh crap, this isn't good." But we find out, oh no, it's so much worse. But of course it is.
You figure like, oh, if they had gotten there a little bit sooner before, the colonists and the Dorina's people had met, they could have prevented the infection, I suppose. But that's not how this is working. It's like, no, we have to give expiration dates so that way they give a little bit more urgency to the narrative. It is effective though, but you have to make sure you get the audience to care about the characters involved, or through one of the main characters involved. Into that window is Dorina herself.
Yeah. And you feel bad for Dorina because, like you said, she finally discovers, hey, I'm not by myself. And then, well, you might be more by yourself than you realize. And you're like, can this woman ever catch a break?
I think on
Seriously?
I think due to budgets they could only show like a dozen people or so, but I have a feeling that colony's probably at least 20 to 30,000 maybe by now, because she said they've been there for a few generations, so I'm assuming anywhere between 50 to 100 years, maybe
Hmm.
150 years, because again the Narn and Centauri have had space travel longer than humanity has, at least
Yeah.
this point in the story.
So, let's see. Abel Harm was another cyber zombie experiment by the nefarious group. He was, yeah, Elysium. You're right. I forgot about that. Yeah, from I think it was season 1 of B5. So it's entirely possible that these guys are for possibly Project Lazarus. That was the name of the experiment. Except he was a different experiment entirely, but could have been under the same umbrella. So,
Well, again, yeah, Psycor did have an awful lot of fun ties to Shadow Check for a while.
yeah, fun for everybody, but the people they experimented on. So,
And not everyone
but
had a Mr. Bester to try to protect them. Like, don't you dare use my main squeeze as a machine in a cog in the machine for your war, Sheridan. Oh God. Like they wanted to use any of them. It was a necessity at the time. So, but
mhm,
they did choose people on purpose that weren't known to be attached to anyone else, even romantically. They chose all the ones that were had no family or spouse to speak of.
right. So,
That's probably what they
and
did with the soldiers here too. Because that's the reason why that one guy is like him and the 30 others that were there. That's why they considered each other family, because they pretty much were all in the same boat.
yeah, pretty much. And, it Geek, I kind of wish you were here, but I understand why you're not. You mean you got guys who were in the military that fought in the Minbari War? They survived by the skin of their teeth, quite literally, and then out of their sense of patriotism, out of their sense of service or anything, they're like, yeah, you can experiment on us to see if we can be better soldiers and if this can be a benefit to others, and then they get royally screwed over. It almost reminds me of that episode from Star Trek: The Next Generation where Finn. Did you watch The Next Generation? I can't remember.
Oh yeah, I've seen a fair amount of it.
Okay, do you remember the episode where they go to the planet that is wanting a mission to the Federation, but they have that group of soldiers that they experimented on because they were selves always seen as consider themselves pacifists, and they created an entire group of essentially super soldiers to fight for them.
I think I remember that episode.
This this sounds. I'm not saying that JMS was like copying that particular episode, but it does speak to similar themes of what was done to that group because originally the soldiers weren't like that. They were just like the rest of the population, but they turned them into super soldiers essentially. So, and it's it's it really it bothers me, because having family and friends both who were in the military, it's just it smacks me as taking advantage of a person's a sense of patriotism and love for their fellow soldiers and duty to their fellow soldiers that they would do such a thing. And especially since this is supposed to be the new Earth Force. Now, granted, this wasn't done under the new Earth Force leadership; it was done done under the previous. But depending on how far back this experimentation goes, it could be even said that it was done during the Santiago administration. You're wondering, well, how much did Santiago know and how much didn't he know?
Well, they don't. They also, some of the Black Book projects, they have the plausible deniability factor where
Deniability.
where they don't
Yeah.
tell whoever's in charge. Like it's kind of like, oh yeah, Mr. President, we're neglected to tell you about these things over here. I mean, even the same thing happened to Sheridan. Members of the Interstellar Alliance didn't tell him about certain things. Cough the Drazi, cough.
Yeah. And let's see, the leader of the soldiers was
yeah,
at the
he was
Battle of the
also in
Line.
that. Yeah, he got a Medal of
Yeah.
Valor for that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And Elysium, thank you for bringing up this comic. I'll bring this up one as well. He was, I believe, in all lore, all the various groups came under the same umbrella, Section 13, and other various factions. It's mentioned in the Babylon 5 wiki. Yeah, for all we know, the project that these soldiers were in, and Project Lazarus was part of the same organization, essentially, Section 13. And this was just another outcome of those said experiments. So, but Gideon, being the resourceful individual that he is, they figure out a way to keep everybody safe, to make everybody believe that the soldiers are dead. At least that one general, that one very sketchy general, whose name at
And
the moment
Max actually redeemed himself, and he changed his report to
report
nothing.
to
Nothing of note was found because the doctor was right. He wanted credit for I found this nearly dead race. We rediscovered them or something.
yeah.
So at least he's not so far gone that he won't pull back a little bit. He's not 100% caustic or self-serving. There's a little sliver of a possibility of his. Yeah, so his character arc probably would start changing him for the better later.
Yeah, I mean, he would eventually he would turn out to be an upstanding and decent individual, not just the complete asshole that we met at the beginning of the series. So, but unfortunately, like so many things, that never got realized. Thank you, WB. So, well, any further thoughts on Parents of the Soul, Fiona, or did you want to move on to the next episode, the Paths of Sorrow?
I think it. I honestly thought it was pretty decent of Darina. Like she overheard the doctor getting captured, and she did try everything she could do to help, but she wasn't aware of the super soldier angle, and so she went flying into the rock face. Man, Darina can take a lick and keep on ticking. Though she got knocked out, but still, she takes a lot of punishment in this series, but keeps on going.
Yeah, she does, but you know what? That just shows what a tough cookie she really is.
Well, she is like she's a thief, but she's also built to take a hit and keep on ticking.
Well, maybe, and I think we don't really know all the physiology of her particular race, but for all we know, her race can take that type of punishment and can keep on going.
Yup. Man, she's pretty spry too.
Yeah,
And I did like the fact that Gideon was able to give the soldiers what they needed and Darina's people without really violating his orders. He just circumvented parts of them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
so that's why I think he's more chaotic good than anything else. Like, I don't think I'd ever see him as more of he's not as a paladin-esque type character as Sheridan is, but he's what's required for this particular series.
Yes.
Because Sheridan wouldn't violate some of his own principles to get certain things done. But I think that's the reason why it's important to have different kinds of characters brushing up against each other. Like some people will like certain characters more than others, but if you have a mixture of people, they can all bounce off each other pretty well.
Yes. Well, that's one of the strengths of the series, because even though they're on a ship and everything, it's kind of isolated. It is a large ship, so any time and everything. I mean, the last couple of episodes that we've covered, Dorina nor Galen were anywhere to be found yet, it would make perfect sense. Well, maybe they're just off on another part of the ship doing something else because the ship is massive. It doesn't require everybody to be involved all the time.
No, I mean that's a good way to do an ensemble cast. You know, like even with the Babylon 5, there's certain episodes that focused on other characters to further other arcs. So yeah, not everybody has to be on screen all the time to be effective.
Right. So, well, anyway, okay. Well, we will go ahead and if there's anything pertinent in terms of patterns of the soul, we can come back to it. But we'll go ahead and move on to Paths of Sorrow. So, um, this honestly was a very interesting episode because we got a whole lot more backstory on on three characters in particular, and that was of course Gideon, Matheson, and Galen. And Excalibur's about 2 kilometers long. Yeah, that sounds about right. So this episode, it hits, I think, for everybody. Let's see, third person POV memories again. Yeah, but you know what? You kind of have to call him, but I understand what you're saying.
Honestly, I made note of it in the chat so I'd remember. But the way this episode opens is kind of like how Gandalf was trying to figure out the password to the Mines of Moria. And then Galen forces Matheson or Max to say, now what did the word say directly? Do I have your attention now? Repeat what you translated. So it was a very literal thing. You know, you will find the path, you know, through the path of sorrows, essentially. So Galen really does figure it out fairly quickly. And that's why he goads Dorina into being able to open the path through her tears, because it is a path of sorrows, very literally.
Yeah, pretty much. You know, it's. And this episode, that alien, I have to say, that alien, the design of it was really cool. It reminded me of something that would have been designed by the Jim Henson studio, because that is a quality puppet. That is not some cheap piece of puppetry that they use there. Everything. I love the design of that puppet. I don't know if they ever get the name of it, but it is definitely eye opening.
Yeah. And Gideon does bring up a good point. Yeah, a lot of times people can be in pain, whether it's constant or not.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy is basically forcing them to confront maybe some unacknowledged pains.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's like the biggest difference, is like sometimes there's sorrows you're carrying that you don't want to pick at because it's scabbed over already. You just don't want to open it back up.
Well, and not only that, each one of them is carrying a burden that they need to let go of, but they don't know how to. And Matheson and Gideon are a little more willing to do so, whereas Galen just is doggedly hanging on to his pain. And, you know, it reminds me of, I think, a particularly good part of Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, when Cybok has McCoy, Spock, and, well, he tries to convince Kirk to confront his pain, but Kirk refuses. He's like, I don't want to lose my pain. I need my pain. It's my pain that keeps me going. And
yeah, there's a slight bit of roboting, just slightly.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, it's okay, but it's starting to clear up again.
Okay. As I was saying, this episode, Paths of Sorrow, reminds me of a particular part of Star Trek V, the Final Frontier, where Cybok has Bones and Spock and Kirk confront their pain, confront their past, and it's But in this case, instead of it being a Cybok, instead of it being a Vulcan, it's this funky looking little alien. And we finally get to see what exactly happened to Gideon and the Cerberus, his ship. And he's like, I don't want to be the only one that gets left. He's like, I don't want to be the one left behind. And we keep hearing he doesn't leave anybody behind. And we finally figure out why he never leaves anybody behind, because he was not left behind, because Galen was the one that came back. We actually see the techno mages going on their exodus and everything. And I know it could be chalked up to Deus Machina, the fact that it was in fact Galen that saved Gideon. But in this particular instance, it does explain why the two of them have such a strong bond, because they met each other at a particular point and everything where it was pivotal for both of them. Galen showed compassion and saved Gideon's life. And, they have that tie now. So, and I do have Colin's comment up here. Does anybody remember Sphere? I do remember that. Let's see. Because there was an aspect of this episode that reminds me of that. No, it's not the shape of the container. Yeah, you can make that. You can definitely make that argument, Colin. The fact that this alien is a conduit through which people are able to finally let go of their burden. That was the other thing that I was going to speak to, Elysium, and thank you for bringing it up. This alien. Oops, that's not the comment I wanted. JMS did say he puts himself in the character. He was raised Catholic, but gave up his faith. Galen, even after getting a message from beyond, still wants to hold his anger at God and ignored the proof.
Oh,
But
and
this,
also, just to note that weird, mysterious apocalypse box thing kind of makes its appearance again.
Yeah, and we finally get the proper name for the apocalypse box. That's what it's called, an apocalypse box. Sorry, I get tongue-tied sometimes.
You wonder, maybe that thing had been on Earth, like, and it influenced Pandora, possibly.
Maybe.
But I find it interesting that the alien was able to help people forgive themselves for stuff that happened, because they couldn't really forgive themselves on their own.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of goes, I know not everybody here is Catholic. I know I'm joining the Catholic Church. Elysium is Catholic. Colin, I can't remember if you're agnostic or whatever the case. Please forgive me and everything. But this alien does act as a bit of a confessor figure. And, the alien says after each encounter, I forgive you. And I can't help but find that interesting.
Well, he's kind of set up as like this third party that won't be like, I judge you for all the mistakes you make, that sort of thing. Because most of the time when people make mistakes, they judge themselves the harshest over whatever XYZ or mistake, generally.
Well, if you think about it too, Galen, Matheson, and Gideon are all suffering from a particular type of grief. The survivor's grief. And that is one of the hardest forms of grief to try and get over, because you are dealing with the fact that you are the one that survived.
Oh, and also some of the behind the scenes thing for this episode, in Matheson's flashbacks with the Psychor facility, that's the facility where Lanier gets killed, apparently.
Oh,
like in that attack.
Okay, so that was kind of like this episode kind of gives us the bookend for how the telepath war ends, essentially.
Yep. And that's the reason why they wanted Lita to be the captured telepath that Matheson interacts with. But she wasn't. TNT were very Small on the budget.
Small?
Small, yes. That's me
That's
being
putting it
polite.
that's being kind. That's being kinder than I would be. They were being Scroogish, is what they were being. So, and
And
PJ, good to see you as always, and have a good night. And thank you for popping by. We appreciate it as always. Combination of grief. Okay, I'm gonna bring this up. Combination of grief and guilt probably are the hardest of combinations to deal with. Yeah, it is because Gideon and Matheson in particular, they feel guilty because others died and they survived, but they're also dealing with the grief and everything of having connections to the people that they themselves survived, and it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to be the one that lived when you feel like you're not worthy to be the one that lived. And we've all, to one degree or another, had to deal with grief ourselves. And this episode asks a question: are you willing to hold on to your pain, or are you willing to let go of it and finally move on with your life? And this alien gives the three guys the opportunity to finally let go of their grief and move on with their lives. Even though they may not feel they deserve it, even though they may feel like they're not entitled to it. It's almost like this alien asks as the voice of the universe and says, you need to let go of this so that you can move on. You know, being someone who has been accompanied to death at a young age, you don't understand it at first, but as you get older, you come to understand it more, and you come to, each time you experience it, particularly, and this is something I've noticed as I've gotten older, each year it gets a little bit harder. Everything from the time that
oh, if you're wondering though about
mm,
Galen's story, like
yeah,
I'm
I know
looking at the
I
chat
do want to
here.
get to Galen's story. Yeah,
It's just a
go ahead.
hint. The Technomage trilogy will give that a lot more boost.
Hmm.
You'll understand his bit of story a bit better if you read the Technomage trilogy.
Gotcha. If I ever get the time. Let's see. But, these guys have been dealing with this particular guilt. Matheson surviving the attack on Side Core headquarters. Gideon surviving the attack on the Cerberus. And Galen surviving the death and everything, living on after the death of his spouse, wherever she could that have been the other technomage that he was in love with?
Yeah, that was her.
Oh,
Like they had she had a
okay.
little bit of a different mindset to being a technomage that balanced his really well. Like she was a lot
Mm-hmm.
more optimistic than he was.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like night and day, but they worked well together. But you probably would have saw a bit more of the technomage story had the series continued.
Yeah, unfortunately, again, not the case. And Elysium and Colin bring up a interesting point. Do you think the alien was the first one? Now, Colin says probably not, since they were all supposed to go with Lori, have gone with Lori, and it's entirely possible that Lorian may have forgotten one. You know, considering this being seen appears to be immortal, more or less, and it has these particular abilities, it is possible it is a first one. It could be the last of its particular species, for all we know. I mean, they don't give a name of the planet or anything else as far as I recall in this episode.
Yeah, and man, I can see the reason why. You look at Matheson's flashback, and even though he was awoken to how bad the Psychor was, he, in a way, she also counterbalanced that with like that's how they were able to end it all. She allowed herself to be hauled in so that they could basically go all well. This is your. We've already given you ultimatums. Here's the biggest one. Bye, guys.
Toodaloo. You're about to go bye-bye. You're about to go boom. So, let's see. I was thinking it was specifically rather than the book. Okay. I'm gonna definitely have to read these books at some point. Maybe after we wrap up all these reviews, I'll have the time. So, but this the paths of sorrow. It said this planet was a place of healing, just not the type that they were looking for. It was a type of spiritual healing rather than physical. Even though after they dropped the alien off, or they put the alien back back in its temple or whatever, um, Gideon is talking to Matheson. He says, "For the first time in years, I slept through the night." Because his mind was always uneasy. His mind was always out of sync, and for the first time in years, he was able to get a full night's sleep. And that, carrying around a burden like that, not an easy thing.
Yeah, and in Matheson's case, he had some survivor's guilt, but he was also ashamed because he could have been in a position in the Corps to change things for the better, but he never really thought about it from like the other side of it. But that's what the Corps trained a lot of them to do, not look at the other point of view, just protect the Corps, protect that family.
Yeah.
Even if that family was messed up.
Exceedingly so.
But Galen's encounter though was a little bit different because he's trying to come at it like, yes, I know more about you, da 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 da. But still, even though Galen's this mystical figure that has like seemingly has all the answers, of all three of them, he's the one that couldn't forgive himself the most.
Yeah, because unlike Gideon and Matheson, Galen's burden is different. He didn't lose a ship full of comrades, and he didn't lose his community. He lost the one person that he loved most in this world. And he just couldn't handle the fact that what was her name? Susanna, I think? The woman the other techno mage that he was in love with?
I think, was it Isabella?
It was Isabella, you're right.
Yeah, I'd have to reread I remember the Barrist part of the Techno Mage trilogy, but yeah, it did go into a lot more about Erlich and why they left, like that self-imposed exile. Because Isabella was more of she was more of a proponent of like, we can't stand back and be apart from people. And at first, Galen was more along the lines of his teacher, like we have to separate ourselves a bit. But her viewpoint helped change him around a bit.
Yeah, and actually, I think it was the first step in him being willing to help others, particularly help Earth Force. Well, more so help humanity find a cure to the Drak plague. And surviving someone, being the surviving person in a relationship, if the other person's gone, is the pain I've never had to feel. I know I probably will someday. I just hope it's not for a long time from now. But, someone very near and dear to me, Mother Ambassador, for those of you who know, she has been a widow since 1984. And every around this time of year, particularly December, I can see the look in her eyes and I can see that pain come back up. And I have to look at her and I have to say, Mom, he would not want you to stay up in the morning. I was like, I know you feel like you should. But she looks at me and she says, when you have the type of love we have, then you'll understand. I have that type of love now, so I do understand better. But at the same time, I hate to see my mother in pain. But for Galen, he feels like he was robbed of something. But Galen forgets the one truth of being in a relationship. Eventually, the one that you love will be parted to you by death. And that is true even for a techno mage. No matter how powerful they may become, no matter how much knowledge they may amass, they will eventually succumb to age or illness. I think Galen would have done well to her Lorian's speech on love that he gave to Ivanova.
Well, yeah, that they live short enough lives where they think love is eternal.
Yeah. You should embrace that wonderful gift, that wonderful delusion. Maybe the greatest gift your species, your race ever received. Lorian was right. And I think if Galen and Ivanova had ever crossed paths, he might have understood that maybe just a little bit better and been able to let go of his pain. And go ahead, Fiona.
Well, now that I think about it, Ivanova probably, if they had been able to integrate more people from Babylon 5 into this, because Ivanova did take over one of the ships that was partially based on the hybridization of Earth Force and Shadow Tech. It's like, oh boy. There's a lot of stuff they could have done. And, I appreciate what Crusade was able to do, even in such a short time. Even with all the corporate mismanagement. In this case, though, I imagine maybe even Galen might have found somebody else in the end. You just never know.
Yeah, maybe. If he had learned to love again and to let go of his resentment towards God. And it's funny that a techno mage would believe in something like God. But at the same time, I think it's somewhat poetic that being that has that much power would believe in a higher, in a intelligent creator.
She was definitely the more spiritual of the two. You will even see that in the Technomage trilogy itself. That's the reason why she wanted the Technomages to branch out and actually help people. Because what happens when they don't is how they were portrayed in that series and what led to her death.
Yeah, because, well, you'll have to fill in on that particular part. Was she injured or something, aiding others? Was that what happened?
No, it was a part of. They were trying to uncover what was happening with the Centauri, and between the Drak and the Centauri, and some of the Technomages wanted to stay out of it. Some of them didn't, and then you had some of them that were not on. They were like plants. They were like not quite sleeper agents, but they knowingly aided and embedded the Drak.
Okay.
So not all of them were with the separatist movement, and not all of them were with like let's go out and help people. Some of them were in it because they wanted to control the direction of the Technomages.
Gotcha. So, and Colin, thank you for bringing that up because I couldn't remember the name of the actor, but I did recognize him. I was like, wait a minute, I know that actor from somewhere, but I couldn't remember his name, and it's Michael Sykes from the Alienation series. He played James Caan's character. I can't remember the name of the character now, but yeah, he was the human partner with the visitor officer. So, but let's see here.
Yeah, and in this episode, even as Gideon's talking about all this stuff, yeah, Galen hasn't found his way out yet.
Mhm.
The other two were able to forgive themselves with this experience, but Galen, if anything, he doubled down on his rage and like basically venting when really you gotta let go of some of that. Like it's okay to vent, but yeah, there's some sort of soul wounds that it's just like, oh wow.
Well, not to mention Galen summons a ball of fire, and he's getting ready to kill the alien, and Gideon is like, "Galen, don't do it. You're better than this. You are not a cold-blooded killer." And eventually, yeah, Galen, he didn't kill him because I think Galen deep down realized that his beef wasn't with the alien, it was with the fact that he was forced to confront his pain
Yeah,
about
and
losing
against
Isabella.
yeah, and he rails against the universe and God and everybody else. Like I don't like. Why would a universe give me someone like her and then take her away like that? The only thing
Yeah.
that ever mattered to me. But it showcases the fact that Galen himself, he's fairly selfless, but his rage is affecting that as well.
Yeah, and anger, rage, resentment, pain, it's it is very it is a, these are very powerful emotions, and oftentimes they can be very destructive. And I think what this alien represented to Galen was a way out of his anger and his rage, but he wasn't ready to let it go. And it's a sad thing to see. Galen got his proof when Matheson came to him and says, "We received a transmission that had your name in it." He's like, most of it was garbled, and and Matheson gave him the printout. And Galen asks, "Well, what was the other word?" And Matheson says, "Love." And instead of accepting the fact that there is a beyond and that Isabella is there, he wads it up and he throws it on the deck of the ship and walks away. And Colin, yeah, now that you mention it, I've slept since then, but now I see the connection you were talking about and everything when I was talking about my vision and everything um, a few weeks ago. Still, it's still hard to talk about, but it is what it is. And
And
eventually, go ahead, Fiona. Go ahead.
the thing is, what makes it more compelling is the fact that she's saying she'll find a way to send him a message from beyond to say that she loves him, and there's the proof, and he's just like still too angry to accept it. But
Yeah, but
the fact that it's on the ground though means there's a possibility somebody else, maybe Darina, picks it up and give it back to him later when he's ready to accept something.
That's possible.
Because again, they didn't showcase him destroying it. He just throws it on the ground and leaves.
Yeah. And that reaction is just you have to think, why is he so angry that she's gone when she found a way to send him a message saying, "Galen, I still love you, and here's the proof that there is a beyond and that we will see each other again." But he is so bound up in his own hate. What could he hate so much that he would ignore a message from the woman that he says he loves so much? What could he hate that outweighs the love that he had or has for Isabella? It almost goes, there's just a touch of this, just a touch or anything of Anakin's story arc and everything in this episode, particularly with Galen. And this is a bit of a deep cut and everything from the Star Wars expanded universe. But there is a particular story and everything. It's during Anakin's life as Vader, and he confronts a quote unquote clone of Darth Maul, and they get into this very protracted duel. But at the end, of course, Vader survives. But Maul, the clone of Maul, asks him, "What could you hate enough that would allow you to kill me?" And Vader says, "Myself." Vader, Anakin, hates himself. And that's what keeps him trapped in that prison for all those years. And yet here, Galen has the opportunity to let go of his pain. And it's the woman that he loves. And he denies it. Because it denies or refutes his position that the universe has no grand design, that there is no grand plan, that there is nothing more beyond what we see in front of us. Because if you remember earlier on in that particular episode, Matheson gets on the lift into the lift car, and he says, "Why do you keep going around in circles?" He's like, "You can go very far in a very little space." He's like, "And you can come to realize that there is no grand design." But it turns out that the universe does have a grand design, and it was giving Galen the opportunity to let go of his pain and his pride and remember the woman that he loved. But he would rather hang on to his presumption that there is nothing more than what we see. And yeah, Elysium, I think you bring up a very good point here. I think Galen does not want to give up the hate because it would mean he has to admit that he was wrong and his anger was the opposite of what he loved, of what his love wanted. Yeah, that's entirely possible, Elysium, because another part of pride or another part of anger is, of course, pride.
How did they say? Pride goeth before a fall?
Fall. Yep, pride go. Well, and what did
Galen
Wanda
does have Galen
Mhm.
does have a bit of pride in him, though. Like, he's very smart, he's articulate, he can usually put two and two together, but when it comes to his own scabbed over wound, he ain't he just tries not to touch it with a 10-foot pole, and then when somebody does touch it, he wants to blow up the alien. Like, oh boy.
Yeah. So, and I've got Colin's comment up here. Also interesting that the character who usually acts as the wise old advisor is the one who is unable to move on. Yeah.
Or even forgive himself, even after
Mm-hmm.
somebody else tries to forgive him.
Yeah, exactly.
Heck, even Isabella tried to forgive him because she understood that he wanted to try to save her at any point possible. But if she's already dying, like, yeah, kind of like what happened with Dorita in the previous episode, where she was with the old man as he was dying. Like, none of her race wants to die alone. Ultimately, Isabella didn't want to die alone.
she's like, quit trying to forestall what's going to happen, and just sit here, just lay here with me, and don't let me die alone. And I think that's something we all fear, is the fact that we don't want to die alone. Nobody wants to die alone, and it's not an unhealthy fear, because it is better to, even if you know you're going to die, it's better to die with those that you love and that you care about, and that those are the last people that you'll see, rather than just being by yourself staring at nothing but a bunch of walls and strangers. And that's no way for anyone to go. I wouldn't even wish that on my worst enemy. So, but Wolfina, um, any other comments, thoughts, ideas, notions?
I'm glad that they put the alien back because you almost see
Yes.
immediately somebody else comes by to seek him out.
Yeah. Of course, it's another alien. And this is the one thing we didn't really mention or anything, but I do want to mention it here very, very briefly. I'm glad the alien doesn't speak. That's all done telepathically or with subtitles.
Yep. It creates like kind of like a one-on-one connection, which most of the people seeking to ease their sorrows probably need. Like Matheson was saying, they needed a third party that didn't know them from Eve or Adam to
Mm-hmm.
basically give them a platform to vent out frustrations or anger or sorrows that they otherwise wouldn't have acknowledged.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I do want to bring up Colin's comment here. I am a for like a better term, a passing fan of Robert Heinlein. Um, two of my favorite movies are adapted from his books, of course, being The Puppet Masters and, well, I know it's not terribly accurate, but of course, Starship Troopers. So, um, be sure and everything, if you catch us on the replay, check out Colin's channel and everything. Him and PJ maybe are going to be doing a rundown or a discussion on the works of Robert Heinlein. So,
Yeah, I find the movie funny, but the actual book does showcase a bit more what happens when you're like a person kind of out of your own era of time, and you get to see how things can drastically change every time you come back from deployment. Oh, oh my! Yeah, but that's
yeah.
basically the surface part of it, though. Too.
Would you like?
It's an interesting book just to read on its own.
Yeah. Would you like to know more?
Yes. Yeah, that's what I appreciate about that movie. Oh my god, what did they do to that cow? We have censored this.
Oh, come on. Let's see the arachnid slaughter that cow. Who doesn't like a good cow slaughter? Come to think of it, Matheson's compassion toward the aliens, perhaps why the resistance later glommed on to him. Colin, that's a very good observation. That is entirely possible.
That and she did give him enough forewarning because he showed compassion to so that way he could get a few people out.
Mm-hmm. Because you notice he wasn't alone in that shuttle. So, yeah, Colin, I have to agree. I did watch a summary on Stranger in a Strange Land, and wow, okay, that's a very interesting book. So, and of course, just before we leave, who shows up? LDG of Free the Net, or LDG of Geeks Enjoyed Neurotica, or LDG of Where's My Intro? I am, of course, teasing a little. A little. LDG, it's good to see you, buddy. And Colin, thank you for dropping the link and everything in the chat and everything for those that want to check out your channel this Sunday. I will try and stop by. Depends on when we get back from church. So, I think we are going to go ahead and wrap up for this afternoon, though. And Fiona, good discussion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, again, like I would honestly, I'll probably put it on the bird site there, the this viewing order that we're doing, because
Mhm.
I did watch the series originally in broadcast order. Back when it was actually on TNT, because I would tune in for that and then tune off once Baywatch started.
Yes. Who wants to
So
watch Baywatch?
like it's just that's not my cuppa. But yeah, these episodes hit better, I think, in the way that
Mhm.
JMS wanted them to hit rather than how it broadcasted.
Yes, I have to agree. So, and yeah, no, I have not heard of that particular series, Colin, but I'll put it on the list of all the dozens of other recommendations that everybody's given me. So, but I do want to thank all of you who tuned in this afternoon or this evening. And if you catch us on the replay, of course, leave any comments down below that you may have in regards to the discussion. And of course, we will be back um, most likely next week, if not next week, the week after. Just depends on scheduling. We've got a couple of doctor's appointments coming up next Thursday, but I will keep you all abreast on my social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube or Instagram. I do also want to let you know me and Mam Ambassador will be back this evening, and we'll be doing our series review of She-Hulk. So be sure to tune in for that. That'll be at 7:30 Central Time. So, and should be a lot of fun. And also this weekend, this Saturday night, we will be kicking off our Halloween festivities, and we'll be bringing you all a review, well, not so much a double header, but a series review of Hocus Pocus and Hocus Pocus 2. So, and that will be, of course, me, and again, of course, like I mentioned, Mam Ambassador. So, this was a request of hers, and being the loving husband that I am, I'm like, yeah, sure, we can do Hocus Pocus. She's been bugging me about it for about a year or so now. She's like, can we please do Hocus Pocus around Halloween? I'm like, yes. So, anyway, we will see you all next time. Have a great week. Have a good weekend. We will see you all tonight and later this weekend. And until next time, this is the Council of One saying in 3, 2, 1. Zooty! Zooty! Zoot! Zoot!
Drink more coffee.
Zooty!